Early voting lines still extremely long throughout the day, especially here at the City County building in Indianapolis. Numbers from the Indiana Secretary of State's office shows that more than 1.5 million Hoosiers have already voted this year. That's already more than 50% of the final vote count in the 2016 presidential election.
Voting should be really an easy process, not a confusing and difficult one.
And WRTV Investigates has learned voters and poll workers are getting conflicting information about whether you can change your mind about the process you use to vote. Our Kara Kenny is talking to voters and groups that are concerned that confusion could discourage people from casting a ballot.
Some voters originally planned to vote absentee by mail, but are changing their minds and now want to vote early in person. We found there's conflicting information out there about whether you can do that. Charlotte Hess of Bloomington applied for an absentee ballot because she's over 65.
I saw the request for an absentee ballot as a kind of an insurance that I would be able to vote in one way or another.
But Charlotte is concerned about lag times involving mail-in ballots, so she decided to vote early in person instead. But when Charlotte called the Monroe County Election Office, they told her she couldn't change her mind.
You must vote by mail or deposit it.
Kathy Radford says the same thing happened to her family friend who's a junior at IU.
I personally think it's oppression.
Monroe County turned her away when she tried to surrender her absentee ballot and vote early in person.
She doesn't trust the system anymore. She really is concerned that her absentee ballot was not going to be counted. So she has the right to change her mind, and that's what she did.
At least two nonpartisan groups agree Indiana's election statute allows you to change your mind: Hoosier Action and Common Cause Indiana.
We strongly believe that we need to reduce every possible barrier to casting a ballot.
You should be able to simply hand your absentee ballot over to the polling place inspector at the early voting location. Tell them you have changed your mind. They will take that ballot from you and allow you to vote in person. We don't need to make voters jump through multiple hoops to exercise their constitutional right to vote.
The Indiana Election Division and Secretary of State's office interpret the statute differently. They say a voter could vote in person if their original absentee ballot is lost, spoiled, or defective. The Election Division says the voter would have to fill out an ABS 5 affidavit to the County Election Board.
We know it's going on in Monroe and Lake counties, but I'm sure there are other counties where it's happening as well. It's causing a lot of problems. We need to have uniform election laws across our state. It shouldn't matter which county you live in.
Common Cause sent this letter to the Indiana Election Commission and the Secretary of State's office, blasting them for providing inaccurate and inconsistent information to voters and asking for corrective action to ensure all eligible voters are able to vote in person at the time of their choosing. Julia Vaughn says no one responded. WRTV Investigates requested interviews with Monroe County, the Secretary of State, and the Indiana Election Division, and no one took us up on that. In emails to WRTV, the state points out on Election Day, voters can surrender their absentee ballots and vote in person. So what can you do if you're concerned about your vote counting? Hoosier Action recommends filling out and hand-delivering your absentee ballot as soon as possible, although some counties only let you do this at the courthouse. You can also surrender your ballot and vote on Election Day. If you have problems, text Hoosier Action at 812-727-0392.
It is completely unacceptable to me that there would be confusion that would curtail or disenfranchise voters.
They're helping voters like Charlotte navigate through this voting confusion. Charlotte plans to hand deliver her mail-in ballot.
Voting should be really an easy process, not a confusing and difficult one.
And Kathy's friend plans to vote on Election Day instead of early. Voters and groups like Common Cause say state lawmakers need to clarify whether voters can change their mind on how they want to cast their ballots.
It's still very inconsistent, and it has to be fixed.
Common Cause Indiana has set up an election protection hotline at 866-OUR-VOTE. Working for you in Bloomington, Kara Kenny, WRTV.
Voters across central Indiana have experienced problems with absentee voting by mail, leading to confusion and frustration as the election draws near. WRTV Investigates Kara Kenny has been digging into those issues and how voters are still finding a way to cast their ballots.
Some voters never received their mail-in absentee ballots, even though they requested them back in September. Ellen Hodge and her husband didn't get theirs, so they ended up waiting 2 hours to vote early at Cranert Park.
And I'm immunosuppressed, so being in a long line with a lot of people is not the ideal way for me to vote.
Linda Stegner of Speedway never got her mail-in ballot either.
You shouldn't have to jump through hoops for this.
She's disabled but voted early in person on Thursday.
Because I want my vote to count, and if my candidate loses by 1 vote, I don't want it to be my vote.
It's still not clear what happened to their ballots. Marion County says they sent them, and the U.S. Postal Service says they have not had any widespread delays. As of Thursday, of the 94,000 ballots mailed, 75,000 have been returned in Marion County. That's more than 18,000 or 20% that have still not been returned. WRTV Investigates has uncovered other problems with absentee voting. Voters are getting conflicting information about whether they can change their mind on how to vote. Charlotte Hess of Bloomington requested an absentee ballot because she's over 65, but now she wants to vote early in person to make sure her ballot is counted in time.
It's a democracy. We want to defend that democracy.
She says the Monroe County Election Office told her she could not change her mind and vote early in person because she already had a mail-in ballot.
That's a problem.
Both the Monroe County Election Supervisor and clerk declined our request to speak on camera. But in an email, the election supervisor told us a voter cannot change their mind after they have a ballot sent to them. The Indiana Election Division and Secretary of State's office say a voter can vote in person if their original absentee ballot is lost, spoiled, or defective.
That is inconsistent with the Indiana election statute, and it's also inconsistent with past practice. As recently as June, there were voters who were allowed to change their mind, not use the mail-in ballot that they requested, and vote in person.
Here's what you can do. On Election Day itself, you can surrender your absentee ballot and vote in person. If you want to hand deliver your absentee ballot to your county, just remember it's due by noon on Election Day. And if you did not get a mail-in ballot, just show up on Election Day and poll workers will give you an affidavit to sign. Voters like Charlotte, Linda, and Ellen say they won't let hiccups stop them from voting, but they're worried it may discourage others. Working for you, Kara Kenny, WRTV. Signs like this one are popping up all over Washington Township about the upcoming referendum. The district is asking the average homeowner to pay an extra $32 a month in taxes. Washington Township will have 2 questions on the ballot: an operating referendum, $16 million a year for 8 years. It would fund existing and new positions like school police officers, bus drivers, teachers, and athletic staff, and would also include $1.5 million to boost teacher pay. The second question, a $285 million construction referendum. The money would in part be used for improving and renovating athletic facilities, expanding student learning spaces, replacing HVAC and electrical systems, and improving access for those with disabilities. The construction referendum would include a new gym honoring Paul Logan, the North Central athletic director who died from coronavirus in April. We talked with teacher and coach Anthony Dean, who supports the increase, as well as a resident who says it's the wrong time.
There's a need for upgrades in our buildings. We have to provide safety for our students. We have to provide technology for our students to use. We have to keep our teachers on staff. We have to provide support staff for our students as well. All of those will be impacted if this referendum doesn't pass.
It's a terrible time to plan to spend $285 million on buildings when you don't know if you're going to have to switch to distance learning in the near future. How can they even plan on that when we don't know what's going on in the coming school year, let alone in 10 years?
If both are approved, the average Washington Township homeowner with a $180,000 home would pay an extra $32 a month in property taxes. Kara Kenny, RTV6.
If you want to see how the referendum would impact you, you can go to the referendum calculator in this story on the RTV6 app and at theindychannel.com.